Hi beautiful people, this channel is all about self-reflection and motivation. So please subscribe, like this video in the end if you really love it, and be your part in something is going to be amazing. Guys, I'm Lottie, and today the subject is the toxic relationship between Africa and Europe. Guys, for my point, it's been many years that Africa has been raped by Europe. The relationship between Africa and Europe never been healthy for my point. This relationship is completely toxic. Since Africa met Europe, Africa is constantly on regression. I don't find nothing who has been beneficial to African continent since Africa met Europe. The relationship between Africa and Europe never been beneficial for the African people and African continent. It's been many centuries that Europe does a big demi about the huge true history of the African continent. And it's been also many centuries that Europe brainwashed full of around the world about the true history of the African continent. For most of you guys who don't know nothing about the African continent, who don't know nothing about the past of the African continent, I'm here to let you know that the first meet between African people and Europe was not about slavery. The first European people who arrived in the western continent in Africa was the Portuguese people, sent by the Prince Henry, the son of the King John of Portugal. The Portuguese explorator who hear about the extremely wealth of the Songhai Empire, of the Ghana Empire, and of the Mali Empire in West Africa. The first Portuguese explorator who arrived in the Western Africa was trading with the African people. The Western African people was extremely wealthy on gold, but was trading salt for gold with the Portuguese people. We was trading gold for perfume with the Portuguese people. We was trading gold for epis with the Portuguese people. We was trading gold for metal and ivory with the Portuguese people. On that time, in the 15th century, the transaction commerce with the African people and the Portuguese people was completely equal. After many years of equal transaction between African people and Portuguese people, in the middle of the 15th century, that commerce, that equal commerce turned on something extremely inhuman in the both sides. Even if the European version is still on the mindset of the people that some kingdom of Africa was selling them people in return to get some gun. But the European explorer did not mention that some African kingdom was trading some slave enemy who didn't want to ally to another empire. When the Portuguese explorer trade gun for human beings with the African people, they didn't mention them intention, even if some African kingdom didn't care about the human being who was trading on that time to the Portuguese people. In the middle of the 15th century, the Portuguese explorer formed an alliance with the Congo Empire, who was one of the biggest kingdom who captured some slave enemy to them empire to sell them, to trade them to the Portuguese people. All that human transaction between African people and Portuguese explorer. The Portuguese explorer was the first who established a slave plantation in Sao Tome, Central Africa, located in Equatorial Guinea. Portuguese explorer also established missionary camps in Africa to brainwash the African people about themselves belief and them animism religion, and to convert the African people to the animism, to the Christianity. After the Portuguese people in the middle of the 15th century, the Dutch followed the human trade slave. And after the Dutch people, the British people follow the human trade slave. And after the British people, the French follow the human trade slave. African continent was not perfect. African continent was not a dream. African continent was not a paradise for some people, some African people, because of many different wars between kingdoms to conquer more and more territory, to become much bigger, much stronger, and much powerful. But African continent was thousand times, guys, more developed than today. African continent, the oldest African continent, was thousand times more developed before the first European explorer. In the beginning of the world, in the 7th, in the 6th, in the 12th, in the 13th, in the 14th century, Africa was the continent the most richest in the world. Africa was a society the most organized and the more developed in the world. Africa was extremely stronger and richest than Europe, Asia, and America. In the 7th, 8th, 12th, and 13th, and the 14th century, when the African people, the African continent, was living on an extreme opulence, Europe was underdeveloped and poor. Africa was in advance about the astrology, about the science. Africa was in perfect harmony with the star. The oldest Africa, the African people, was having a huge knowledge about the natural medicine. Culturally, Africa was an inspiration for the oldest world. African continent was an inspiration for the world of art, about the sculpture, about the world sculpture, and especially about the African statue and the African totem, full of around the world. Culturally, even if most of the people on that planet don't know, but the African people was the first explorer on that planet, thousands and thousands of years ago, before the European. Yes, guys, the African people was the first explorer on that planet. It's so hard to believe, because we have been told for many centuries, since the 15th century, by the European people, the same story over and over again, that slavery and colonization saved the African continent. You must believe one story when you hear that all your life. But the truth is, African people get out to Africa and explore the world 1,000 years ago before anybody else. Full of around the world, all of the scientific cannot explain how come the population like a Fiji, the population like a Fiji people, Iceland, of Malaysia, are mostly dark skin, black dark skin, and Afro hair. The scientific people cannot explain how come the Aborigines people in Australia are an African descendant who left Africa 17,000 years ago as a Papua people in New Guinea. The scientific people cannot explain how come the Siddish and the Abshit are African descendants in India. In India, we can find the Indian people with an extreme dark skin. In Gujarat, in Karnataka, and in Andhra Pradesh. Some scientists say some Siddish people in India are African descendants because Portuguese explorators bring some slaves from Africa to India 300 to 500 years ago, but this is fake. The African presence in India was in India thousands and thousands years ago before the first Portuguese explorator. Africa was also an inspiration, a cultural inspiration for Europe. When the Moorish people, called Moor today, the true Moor people are black people with the dark skin. When the Moor people conquered the Western Europe in the 7th and the 8th century, 99% of the Spain population couldn't read and couldn't write. Even the king there on that time in Spain couldn't read and write properly. On that time, on the 7th and 8th century, the Western Europe are only 2 universities when the Moor on that time have 17 universities. When the Moor conquer the Western Europe, they civilize them and they bring to them knowledge and riches. Culturally, Africa inspires and educates the world. The geometric genius of the Egyptian people, the black Egyptian people, who create and build most of the pyramids. That genius is still a mystery today in the 21st century. Because of the geometric and the mathematic, incredible and impossible. Mathematically and geometrically is impossible today for most of the human beings, most of the scientists and the maths to reproduce that genius. How the Egyptian people, that genius they used to build out most of the pyramids in the 18th, the 20th, and the 21st century. Some of the European philosophers who was educated in Egypt by the true Egyptian black people lied to the world and built up the scientific racism in the 19th, in the 20th century. Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. After 4 centuries of extreme and inhuman violence, the African continent was involved. The European imperialism, torture, rape, used the human body as a rat of laboratory. open a human brain as a rat of laboratory, tattoo and burn a human being as animals with hot iron, sell and buy man, women and children on the street market, killed billion and billion African people during 4th century. The European imperialism destroyed the African civilization, kill on some way the African culture, and kill on some way the African identity. Kill people history, rewrite a new history to make them glory, and rewrite a new history about the African people, full of lie and full of deformation. So today, 7 billion people on that planet still call that progress. After all of that, 7 billion people keep saying that the European people bring progress and civilize the African people. 7 billion people on that planet keep saying that the European people bring development to Africa. After all that horror, after many centuries of unhealthy relationship between Africa and Europe, when I look at Africa today, I'm just wondering who mostly benefit to other. Guys, ask to yourselves the right question and find out the truth. What changed for African people and Africa since the end of the colonialism in the 18th century? When you knew about the true and huge history of African continent, you just realize that the relationship between Africa and Europe is just unhealthy. It's just toxic. It's toxic since the 15th century. I don't find nothing benefit African people since Africa met with the European people. That relationship is just toxic. Nothing good come out since that mate. And Africa need to understand that today. Africa need to wake up and take a distance from Europe. I'm not saying like Africa need to take a distance from all of the world, but Africa need to take a political distance with all that foreigner country. Because all that foreigner country today made Africa today, the Africa we knew today, and the Africa, how Africa must be, is just a regression. It's the regression. They didn't bring nothing positive on the African continent, on my point. I think it's the time for Africa to wake up and protect herself and protect African people. Guys, we finally reached that subject of unhealthy relationship between Africa and Europe. Now I want to challenge your own reflection about that subject. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about the history, the true history of Africa, find out the huge and vast truth about Africa before the 15th century. Take your time, find out the truth, and come back to my channel and comment. I want you to be curious. I want you to do your own research and come back and comment. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you really enjoy that subject, and I hope I really challenge your own reflection. And please guys, don't leave this channel without subscribe. You got nothing to lose, but you will challenge so much more. Your own reflection. Click on the right button, like this video, share this video. I kiss you a lot and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Bye.